As fuel costs rise, so does the use of alternative heating equipment. We'll tell you why safety should be your first priority.
Over 3 million people called the Poison Control Center in 2012. In recognition of Poison Awareness Month, we'll tell you the biggest dangers inside your home.
I'm Lon Bakey.
And I'm Carrie Crotty. Welcome to your police report. With fuel costs rising, more people are turning to alternative heating sources.
Knowing how to properly use them can prevent unnecessary injuries and even death.
Fire and safety educator Becky White from the Department of Public Safety now joins us to talk about simple safety measures. Welcome, Becky.
Welcome.
Thank you.
With the portable and space heaters, what should people keep in mind in terms of safety?
Well, a lot of things with the space heaters, we usually use them, sparingly. So people plug them in and then they forget that they've plugged them in, and they'll throw clothes across the top of them or nearby. You need to make sure that if you're using them, you keep a 3-foot space clear. It's very easy for your blankets on your bed or the curtains to catch on fire if they're too close to the space heaters.
So don't dry your clothes on them.
No,
Okay.
no, that would be bad.
Okay.
What about gas burning heaters?
The problem with gas burning heaters, especially if you're using them indoors, is carbon monoxide, which of course is a byproduct. And there's no way to know that you have carbon monoxide issues unless you have a working carbon monoxide alarm. So oftentimes that's the major concern with those. If people are using them, we suggest that they use, that they put generators and stuff away from the house 10 feet and, run stuff in. But heaters like that you should never use inside.
Okay.
How about wood stoves and fireplaces?
The big thing with those is you need to make sure that you are getting them cleaned and inspected routinely. A lot of times, we'll show up on fire calls, chimney fires or something where the flue is clogged, and people say, oh yeah, I just had it done last year. And then when they do a little bit more digging, it's actually been about 5 years. It's one of those things, we forget to do. But you need to make sure that they're routinely inspected and cleaned. And it's better, of course, to do it in the summer months when someone can really get in there and do a good job inspecting it. But if you have any signs of fire or any signs of smoke coming back down, negative pressure, anything like that, you need to make sure that you stop using the fireplace until it can be inspected again.
Can snow and cold weather affect gas meters?
It can. There's a little exhaust thing on the front of the gas meter. If that gets plugged up with snow or ice, because sometimes it condenses
Sure.
and the water freezes again, then you have an issue where the inside of the gas meter could freeze up. Xcel Energy has a lot of really great advice on their website. If you think that it's frozen, you shouldn't go and try to chisel it out. You should call Xcel and have them come and check it. But you want to clear a path around the gas meters, which are usually on the sides of your house. If you're in a condo or something where you're sharing, all of them are usually together on one side of the complex. But you want to make sure that whole area is cleaned away and that there's a path to it if there's an emergency. But yeah, if you have snow and ice on top of it, you don't want to use a snow blower, or you want to be very careful with a shovel around there. And if it's really too much for you, then call Xcel and they'll come out and clean it out for you.
You kind of answered the snow and ice part. Where are they located?
They are usually on the one side or the other of the house. It depends on how the house was built and where it sits on your property. Usually it's on the right side when you're looking at the house, right towards the front of the house. So generally that's where they are. People should know where they are, do a walk around your house and figure that out. And then again, as you're walking around, make sure that you have that area cleaned out.
Do you see an increase in fires during the winter when people are more closed in, they're inside?
We tend to, because our leading cause of fire in Minnesota is cooking, heating, and candles. And of course, we heat our houses more in the winter, and we tend to use candles more in the winter to create that kind of homey, make us feel a little bit better about being inside in the winter. So right around the holidays usually is the worst because
Okay.
people are distracted and they're cooking and family's there and all of that is
Sure.
going on. But even into January and February, we see problems with those heaters that aren't cleaned, and candles are still an issue.
Sure.
Can you give us some ways to protect our homes?
Big thing is maintenance. We talked about the fireplace and stuff. You just need to make sure that your furnace is cleaned and everything's right with that as well. Dryer vents is a big one too. You want to not just clean out the vent that you can grab the lint off of when you're between each loads, but really get shove a vacuum cleaner thing down there and get under the whole dryer itself, and then the tubing as well. A lot of times we have smoldering fires that happen in the tubing because some of the lint gets into the tubing. Making sure that when you're cooking that you're paying attention to your food. If there's anything on the stovetop and you leave the room, you really should shut it off. It's very easy for us to get distracted when we leave the room. So those are our big ones. If you're using a candle or a space heater or anything like that, you want to make sure that you turn it off or blow it out before you leave the room as well. And then keeping kids 3 feet away from all of those things, the stove, the candles, the fireplace, space heaters, all of that. You just want to keep everything away from those heat sources.
All right. And in 2013, fire deaths were down 14% from 2012. How do you explain that?
Well, in 2012, and again this year, sadly, we've had a lot of multiple fatal in one fire deaths. So in last year we had singles. So
Oh, okay.
it's good we've actually had less fires as well, which is a good thing. I think people are being a little bit more mindful, paying more attention that fire doesn't just happen to somebody else. It could happen to anybody. So being more mindful about what's going on. But yeah, sadly, I think the numbers are going to go up again in 2014 with these horrible fires that we've had. But we're trending down overall. So we're going in the right direction.
It's better.
Yes.
Better. Well, thank you very much, Becky. We appreciate all
Thank
the
you for your time.
information.
Yeah, thank you.
Some of the most common products in our homes can be the most hazardous, and small children are at greatest risk.
Fortunately, poison centers across the country can answer questions that usually keep people out of emergency rooms. In recognition of Poison Awareness Month, we sat down with a firefighter and EMT who works for Minnesota's Poison Center.
It's kind of like SpongeBob. There's an episode where all he knows is fine dining and breathing. All we know is basically breathing and toxicology.
Educational Director for the Hennepin Regional Poison Center, Kirk Hughes, has nearly 20 years' experience as a firefighter and EMT and understands the unique challenges first responders face when dealing with exposure calls.
I'd be on a rig and we'd be responding as a first responder to a kid who drank bleach or ate something, and we're pretty clueless. We're like, oh, we're supposed to be the experts and calm everybody, but it's like ABCs is all we could do, So we jump off and act all, confident and such, and I had no idea that I could call the Poison Center.
Hughes teaches firefighters, police, doctors, and clinicians in toxicology, which he says is an ever-changing field.
What a lot of people don't know is about 3/4 of the clinicians that are in an emergency department, when somebody comes in with a toxic exposure, they go in the back room and they call us. We're considered to be the experts.
In 2013, the center, which serves Minnesota and the Dakotas, received 51,000 calls from Minnesota residents alone. Most calls are related to hazardous exposures in the home, but can range from insect bites to food poisoning. And because of the service, most calls keep people out of emergency rooms.
But the real strength of our service is that 92% of those tens of thousands of calls that we get that originate from the home can be safely kept at home, which saves the whole healthcare system literally millions of dollars.
In 2010, Hughes says the Poison Service saved $23.3 million in healthcare costs. 47% of the calls to the center involved children under 6. Although most toxic chemicals aren't harmful in small doses, just one swallow of windshield washer fluid can be fatal if left untreated. Hughes says most serious outcomes with children happen when they're visiting grandparents. He reminds them to lock up their pill minders, which look like candy to kids, during visits.
So Easter's coming up right after Poison Prevention Week, and we want to make sure that the visiting grandparents or the ones being visited keep their medications away, safe, locked up, so that we don't have to get the call and say they got to go in, because it's going to ruin everybody's holiday.
Hughes says the center is also a great service for seniors who have questions about medications. The center, which staffs 28 people, is confidential, takes calls 24/7, and is free.
If you'd like to learn more about the Minnesota Poison Control System, log on to their website.
We're going to take a break, but first, here's this month's Maplewood Community Minute.
It's tax time, and the only thing worse than doing your taxes is having your tax returns stolen. Here are a few ways to prevent criminals from taking your hard-earned cash. According to the Federal Trade Commission, identity theft complaints dealing with tax returns jumped from 15% in 2010 to 43% in 2013. Filing early is smart because the IRS may be able to process your return before identity thieves can. Crooks usually don't have access to W-2 forms, so if they're filing in your name, they make up the numbers hoping the return gets through the process. If the criminal is successful, your legitimate return will be kicked out and the refund will be denied. Eventually you'll get your money, but it could take months. Most victims discover they've been scammed when they get a letter from the IRS noting more than one return. Although you can't prevent identity theft, you can reduce your risk. If you file by mail, use a secure mailbox and not your unlocked mailbox in front of your house. If you file electronically, use a secure computer and not a public Wi-Fi network. And as we mentioned, file as early as possible. It may also be a great idea to have your refund electronically deposited so thieves can't take your refund right from your mailbox. Don't make it easy for these criminals to steal from you. Identity theft is growing every day, and you need to be proactive in fighting against it. I'm Nick Kreckler, and I'll see you next time.
Extra DWI enforcement is now being served on Minnesota roads. Don't be what you drink.
First responders need to continually train in order to do their jobs.
Here's how one unit, who we see every year out at Polar Plunges, prepares for ice rescue.
That ice is pretty thick.
Don't put yourself in a spot where you're risking your life or the life of someone else. If you don't know the lake, if you've never been on the lake, it's not a time to go out for a joyride.
Ice fishing is a pastime that helps many Minnesotans survive long winters, but nearly every year people die after falling through ice. 4 people died last winter, including a 9-month-old baby. The Ramsey County Sheriff's Department's Water Patrol functions as a rescue unit and conducts drills during winter.
If he doesn't respond, then maybe he's frozen to the ice, maybe he's beyond response.
Deputy and diver Mike Servatka says rescuers must be ready when a call comes in. People who go through ice have little time before they lose dexterity.
So we have to respond quickly. We got to be ready. You know, you're looking at 5 to 10 minutes the minute you get the call that you have to get there and get in the water and rescue a person.
The suits divers wear are buoyant and cumbersome. It's hard to move around in and on top of the water, but they're warm and keep divers dry. In addition to emergency calls, divers are on site during special events.
We're in the hole at the Polar Bear Plunge in case there's that one person who might not be able to get out due to the cold. And we just want to ensure everybody's safety and have a fun event. I think everybody here will attest that we really enjoy working the Polar Bear Plunge.
Servatka says even though ice may be thick, there are still soft spots where cars go through. He says it's a good idea to call local bait shops or the sheriff's department to check thickness and danger spots. He says staying off during bad weather is also a good idea.
Like today, you can see the weather's pretty bad. The weather's bad, there's another reason not to be out there. You got a lot of people that like to ice fish and they kind of pick the wrong time maybe to go out there and they put themselves in danger.
It's been a brutal winter, but hopefully winter weather will soon start to dissolve.
In the meantime, psychologist Jean Ike from Maplewood Psychology joins us to give us some coping strategies as we enter the home stretch. Welcome, Jean.
Thank you.
Welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Well, I'm a licensed psychologist, and like you mentioned, I practice at Maplewood Psychology, Maplewood, Minnesota. I also teach part-time at St. Mary's in their Master's of Counseling Psychology program.
What is your area of expertise?
I'm what you would call a generalist, so I treat people with a wide variety of mental health concerns. So I often see people with depression or anxiety. I offer skills to help people cope with stress management or difficult life events. I also have expertises in working with adolescents, as well as a form of therapy called dialectical behavior therapy, which is a type of therapy for people with persistent mental illness. People who benefit from that are chronically suicidal and self-injure.
How can weather affect the average person?
I think the weather has actually a really big effect on the average person. I think it can range from just sort of mild annoyances of having to shovel, cars not working, but I think it can also have a bigger impact in that sometimes people don't want to leave the house, which prevents them from engaging in some of the normal things that people tend to do, like socializing with their friends or going out to eat with their significant other, getting exercise. Could even get in the way of daily routine tasks like going to the grocery store or running some errands or chores. And I think that time not spent in the community is more time spent at home, which people tend to just default to sitting on the couch and watching TV, which obviously reduces things like exercise and health.
What are some ways to counteract the long, dark, dreary days?
I think that there are a lot of ways that we can be mindful and counteract winter. One of the biggest ones is self-care. That one thing that people tend to drop off on doing is taking care of themselves during winter. So making sure that you're getting enough exercise, that you're eating a balanced meal, that you are getting enough sleep but not too much sleep, because people tend to like to oversleep in wintertime. Making sure that you're getting outside and getting some sunlight and fresh air. But I also think that there are a lot of other things that we can do too. Don't let the cold, unless it's unsafe to drive, don't let the cold prevent you from getting out of the house and seeing your friends and family, doing those daily tasks that you would normally do. And I also often suggest creating a new relationship with winter. That we tend to think of winter as this really cold time where we don't want to leave the house. So try to engage in positive things that you like about winter. So maybe pick up skiing, try snowboarding, maybe just go out in the yard and build a snowman with your kid or by yourself.
Or polar plunging.
Or why not? Yeah.
When is it time to see a professional?
I think it's time to see a professional when some of the symptoms that we typically see with depression start to come up. So things like difficulty getting out of bed, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, big changes in your sleep or your appetite, and that those changes have a big enough impact on your life that you're not going to work or attending to work like you usually would. If it's really getting in the way of your relationships or getting in the way of self-care or even your social relationships. And then of course if any safety issues pop up, so if there's any thoughts of suicide or self-injury, obviously that's an essential time to go and get help.
Sure. Are there any common issues that you're seeing amongst people with the cold weather?
Sure. A lot of the clients that I see struggle with things like depression and anxiety. And I think, like I said, the cold weather has an impact on just the average person. I think the cold weather has the same type of impact, but in a deeper way for people who struggle with depression or anxiety. Sure. So people who struggle with depression, they already have a difficult time getting out of the house, getting out of bed, attending to self-care. And you add cold onto that, and then it just becomes even more difficult. And I think for some of the kids and teenagers that I see, they just get cooped up for a long time.
Sure.
They can get a little restless. They don't get the recess, especially when it's really cold at school. So I think that they can be a little antsy as well.
Yes.
What is seasonal affective disorder?
Seasonal affective disorder is characterized by episodes of depression during a certain season. Often here in Minnesota, we see that during the winter. The idea is that they are experiencing these depressive episodes during a specific season, but not outside of that season. So it's really isolated to that time of the year.
And what are the symptoms?
The symptoms for seasonal affective disorder are very similar to the symptoms for depression. So things like fatigue, difficulty concentrating, feelings of guilt or worthlessness, sleep or appetite changes, suicidal ideation. But in addition, with seasonal affective disorder, we also tend to see a very specific type of sleep disruption, and that people tend to oversleep and have difficulty getting up in the morning, as well as overeating. Specifically, they eat a lot of carbs.
Now, if I understand this right, seasonal affective disorder is not just a wintertime thing, it's also in the spring and summer?
It can be, absolutely, and I think that tends to be a misconception, that seasonal affective disorder absolutely can happen in winter, but we can also see it in the spring and summer. With summer, seasonal affective disorder looks a little bit different in that there's an anxiety component in addition to the depression.
And who is most at risk for seasonal affective disorder?
Like most depression diagnoses, women tend to be more at risk, as well as people who live in climates that have seasons. Also, if there's a family history of depression, they tend to be a bit more at risk as well.
Okay. How can it be treated?
Seasonal affective disorder is treated with, there's this form of therapy called light box therapy, which is basically a box that emits ultraviolet light, which we're thinking has a change on people's vitamin D and can just create a better mood. But then also medication can be used as well as psychotherapy.
Do you think it's becoming more acceptable to talk about mental health issues than it has been in the past?
I think it's definitely gotten better. I do see people being a bit more open and accepting of talking about mental illness, but I also think that we have a long way to go.
And how does it affect the families?
Depression, any kind of mental illness can have a big impact on families. Sometimes what we see is that the person who is mentally ill is then caretaken by people in their families. Parents who have mental illness can have a hard time being there for their kids. And then just the daily tasks of, like I said, getting groceries, running errands can become more difficult, which can obviously add in a level of stress to the family.
And how can it affect the community or their workplace?
A lot of mental illnesses have an impact on concentration and ability to focus at work, and so I think reduced performance is something we tend to see. Absenteeism, even people needing to leave their job because their mental illness gets to a place where they can no longer function. And I think in terms of the community, I mean, there's, especially with the very severely and persistently mentally ill, there's a high correlation with being severely and persistently mentally ill and homelessness. So I think that can have an impact on the community as well.
Okay.
How do we help those that are in need of the help?
I think one of the biggest things is reducing stigma. So gaining a level of comfort in talking about and knowing more about mental illness. Recognizing that things like depression and anxiety are incredibly common. People likely have depression and anxiety. So I think part of it might also be being open to hearing people's stories and asking how you might be able to help. If you know anybody in risk of suicidality, of course getting them emergency help is absolutely necessary.
All right. Well, great information. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you so much for your time. And just a reminder, the Maplewood Police and Fire Department provide 24-hour crisis support if you or someone you know is thinking of suicide.
We're going to take a short break, but there's more to come, so stay with us.
Our heroes from across the upper Midwest are coming home from wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Only now, some have a new battle to fight, unemployment. Hello, I'm Rocky Lynn, co-founder of Tribute to the Troops.
I'm Sergeant Dejan Farrell.
And I'm Captain Ron Jarvie. A survey of our troops serving overseas found 25% say employment is a major concern for them as they come home.
Right now, the unemployment rate for today's veteran is 12%. That's twice the average of others living here in the heartland.
These service members learn quickly. They've experience with advanced technology and demonstrate teamwork, discipline, and leadership under difficult circumstances.
This year, Tribute to the Troops, the Armed Forces, and the Upper Midwest Emmy Chapter are asking you to hire our today's veterans. Employers, you've seen what these veterans have done for their country. Think what they can do for your business.
To hire today's veteran, visit positivelyminnesota.com/veterans.
Heroes come from small towns.
Extra DWI enforcement is now being served on Minnesota roads. Getting busted will cost you thousands. Don't be what you drink.
The Maplewood Police Department is investigating a string of suspicious phone calls to local businesses.
In all cases, the male caller identified himself as a police officer and says he's conducting a survey of area businesses. He asks a series of questions, all to female employees, relating to their age, hair color, and length of employment.
Unlike other scam calls, the caller never asked for money and hangs up once confronted.
If you receive any suspicious phone calls, you're asked to call the Maplewood Police Department at 651-767-0640.
There's some good news when it comes to organ donation. Thanks to the partnership between the Minnesota Department of Public Safety and the 3 donation agencies in Minnesota, registered donors have increased by 13% in the 3 years.
Nearly 63% of Minnesotans are registered as organ, eye, and tissue donors, compared to 45% nationally. If you're interested in becoming a donor, you can register at donatelifemn.org or check the little box next time you renew your driver's license.
Before we go, we'd like to remind you to like Your Police Report on Facebook. You can get updates, post comments, and provide us with story ideas. We'd love to hear from you.
That wraps up this edition of Your Police Report.
Thanks for watching.